Entrepreneurial Edge is brought to you by Business Banking from FNB, because small ideas can lead to big business. FNB, how can we help you?
Welcome back to the Entrepreneurial Edge. I'm Chris Bishop. Now, if you have any comments and suggestions on the show, please send me an email to entrep@abn360.com. Now, still in the studio with me, I have Jerome Cohen, the founder of Offlimits Communications. Now, just to talk a little bit more about how your company was originated. You were starting to get into these big events here in Johannesburg. Just tell us a bit more about it.
Well, to tell you very quickly, because obviously that's the last 15 years to resume in 2 minutes. But to be very brief, and just also to for people to understand that sometimes you don't necessarily know where you're going, but it's sort of like you've got to follow your gut feeling, and you've got to follow that logical sort of like evolution of your business. So from where we started this little party event, we went into doing some kind of breakthrough within the music industry, bringing out French house DJ that was like really well known overseas. The problem we had there is that people, obviously in South Africa, were not sort of like, it was a bit too new. It was a bit too advanced for the time. It was in '97, it was a future son of Paris. And getting the first sponsorship like with Elle magazine and things like that. And then we went onto sort of like the main market, black market, whatever you want to call it. We basically associate ourselves with YFM when YFM started, and we became the YFM sort of promoter at the time. And for quite a few years, we were working very closely with Randall Abrahams, and for like 5 years, we created a lot of events on the main market. I had a workshop called the House versus Quartos. People will remember this kind of event. It was crazy. It was all about like 12,000 people at the time. Doing the YFM birthday, bringing out little Louis Vega, very big name within, worldwide within the house market. So simultaneously, we were sort of like one of the biggest promoters within the market of producing big music events. And then on the other side, it was more like dance event, where we had properties that we created called Dreamscape, for example, which every New Year's Eve was the biggest bash. Same Top Star Driving, electric workshop, bringing out Carl Cox the one night, where we flew Carl Cox through the night, starting with our friends down in Cape Town at Synergy. They had 18,000 people that year, it was 2001. Up into a Learjet, through the night, arrive in Joburg at 4 o'clock in the morning, start playing until 9 o'clock. And it was literally 10,000 people that night until 8 o'clock in the morning. It was crazy. So those were the crazy time. Completely insane. We obviously worked very hard, but that kind of productions, we learned so much, out of it, in terms of marketing, sponsorship, how to deal with big corporation. So beyond, or should I say, behind the fun side, there was obviously the hard work. And we followed the logical evolution of the business, connecting ourselves with, it was a great move, obviously, to go with that first party in '96, because the results, 8 years down the line, we knew everybody in Johannesburg. We knew more people in Johannesburg than people who was probably born in Joburg. So that was the irony of it. And from then on, we opened a club also. We had a restaurant, and we produced events like the Metro Music Award, the first big Metro Music Award at the ICC in Durban. I think it was 2004. Fantastic show, 3 hours show on stage with 120 artists. It was an amazing time, and then creating a whole lot of different award ceremonies, show on stage. And then step by step, we evolve after the sort of like the club story, which was a big club also in Johannesburg. My cousin Steph carry on within the club business because he's made for it. He owns the biggest club in Johannesburg today. And I carry on within the advertising business, without really knowing at first that it's going to become an advertising agency. It was more sort of like event-based. And then my wife, Lisa, who had the marketing and the advertising background coming from well-known advertising agency, came into my life and then into the business life around 2008, which we had our first break where we won a big, big client. And from then on, we've done something quite different because of our background. what we've done, what we created within our environment is very different than the other agency that you can find out there.
So Offlimits, just give us a broad brush, very short version of what it actually does. I mean, what sort of markets you're into now?
Well, what we do is we specialized within the below the line space, but the real below the line space, because that's a kind of a word that's very misleading today, where everybody and anybody employ that word. The reality is that what we've tried to do is to become very strong in-house by creating sort of like a creative hub and very strong partnership, and having all of this in-house within the different segments of the advertising business within the below the line space. So like, for example, you've got the strategy, which is something that normally sits with the above the line, because from a billing point of view, it's within the above the line. But we partners with W5, which is my wife, Lisa Alton, and a partner, Mzamo Xala. Mzamo, very sharp boy. Guys come from Unilever, marketing manager of the Springboks, Virgin Mobile brand managers, and so on and so forth. And Lisa also is, so those two are basically top strategists in the country. So we created a partnership. We sit into the same office, and it helped us to build each other's business.
But this marketing business that you're in now, you must have suffered over the last few years with what's been happening in the economy.
Not really, no.
Not really?
No.
You managed to ride it. How did you manage to do that?
Look, I'll be honest with you. There's one thing about with this business and within South Africa that's been quite nice in a way, is that we never really had to worry about competition. I think there's far enough work for everyone out there. I just think that that's the nice thing about being here in a way, is that it's not that we had the beginning, South Africa is actually very advanced from an advertising point of view, but I don't think that there is that many people out there, even if there's a lot of different companies that do this kind of whatever kind of job the way it's supposed to be done, or the way big corporations expect them to have the job, the project delivered. So it's very important for us to start from that strategy type of insight, do research, to create the perfect campaign, to understand for the client especially why we're coming up with this kind of creative. And also we partners, and we've got in-house some of the best creative within South Africa. So this is what we're trying to do essentially, is to create within each segment of this below the line space the best possible team, and having the best possible people, and making sure that from the time that you get the brief from the client and you understand what their needs are, you developed a project or a campaign that is going to be taken care of from top to bottom, right down to the promoter in store, if the campaign needs a promoter in store. You know what I mean? But that's for us what we understood and what we thought was very important, is to try to really manage, but on a try to be successful and to succeed in the building of all the different space within the business, if you see what I mean.
Sure. Where do you think the advertising business is going in your experience? I mean, people you talk to, they say, oh, print has had its day and what have you, but what do you think?
It's going obviously, very much digital, but I think today it's not really about the old-fashioned way of doing things, which a lot of the company, agencies and corporations are still they're fearing of moving forward towards something that they don't know really, or they don't understand. So they're quite stuck within the old sort of like format of advertising, which is your above the line, below the line, and making sure that everybody is stays within the parameters and everything. We've created a little bit of stirs, and we try to check things a bit by creating this communication agency that brings the sort of like that through the line sort of expertise, where we can, it's not because we are within the below the line space, we're not going to be good at such and such delivery. We try to focus on the communication. And I think this is what's different today, is that you've got certain companies that's trying to to shape on the model that some of the companies overseas have already sort of built, and which is communication through the line, which is giving this real 360 solution to the client, and not just focusing on one aspect of a campaign.
I mean, lastly, very briefly, if you're an advertising company starting up now, where would you be concentrating, looking to the future and moving on, as you put it? What would you advise someone who's going to start up an advertising company right now?
Look, it's very difficult. It's a very competitive market. Even if we don't look at competition, even if we've been very lucky in terms of the way things grown, and it is a very competitive market after all. To arrive today, you've got to have a strong experience within the field. Mm-hmm. You've got to really understand, who are the different players, how to play the games, what kind of innovation ideas you can actually bring to the table. It's complicated, but look, nothing happened overnight at the end of the day. That's the bottom line. People might think at first that they look at advertising and they do certain studies that will lead them to work within advertising, but maybe they're made to do something else.
Well, great advice indeed, right from the middle of the industry. Mm-hmm. Jerome Cohen of Offlimits, thank you very much for your time and your insights. That's a wrap of this edition of the Entrepreneurial Edge. Be sure to tune in again next week for another episode of the Entrepreneurial Edge. Until then, it's goodbye.